Chapter 1.
Shut up.
Marcus growled at his two brothers who were busy bickering about who forgot to bring the rope.
It doesn't matter. We'll make do without it. The floor seems solid enough.
And to prove his point, he stomped up and down on the floor several times.
This place gives me the heebie-jeebies,
Sean said.
What, you a sissy boy? You could have stayed at home and hid under Ma's dress, you know.
Craig taunted. He tried to sound bold, but it was obvious to both his brothers that he also was rather uncomfortable here.
Will you two stow it? No one has lived here in over 300 years, so shut up and let me try and figure out where we are.
Marcus said as he held the lantern high enough to examine the room. They had discovered a hole in the side of the mansion that allowed them access to this room. The room was narrow and long, but void of any content. While this did not bother Marcus, he felt a slight tingle up his spine when he realized that the room was spotless. No dust or cobwebs, just as if someone had cleaned it top to bottom recently. At the far end of the room was a small door.
It may have been a storage room.
Sean said.
Oh, listen to the expert.
Craig said, his eyes rolling with a devilish smile on his face.
Then shut up. I was just trying to help.
Sean said.
Shut up. I was just trying to help.
Craig repeated in a high-pitched tone and put his right leg back and took the corners of his tunic and curtsied while sneering at Sean. Sean's red hair matched his temperament, as he did not fear his older brother and on many occasions stood toe-to-toe with him, which usually ended up with Sean being thrown through or over something. Marcus let out a heavy sigh as Sean stepped up to Craig and gave him a push.
Why did I think I could count on these two?
Marcus thought as he stepped towards them, meaning to end it here and now, as he was considerably larger than both of them. They knew better than to pick a fight with him. Before he could reach them to knock their heads together, Sean charged Craig at full speed, sending them both crashing into the wall behind them, which exploded in a cloud of dust and splinters. The dust rushed out into the room, cutting any light off, and the house groaned as if it might come down on their heads. The noise died down after only a moment or two. Marcus waited several long heartbeats before the dust died down, enough to see what happened to his brothers.
You two had better hope you're dead, because if you lived through this, you're going to wish you all were dead.
There was a long pause, then he heard Sean moan. The dust finally settling, enough for Marcus to make out another room, beyond the gaping hole his brothers just made. He followed them into the room, ready to strangle them, but seeing them in a tangled heap on the floor brightened his mood slightly. Marcus stood over them.
Well, you two?
Sean looked up at his brother while he tried to pull his leg free.
Did the Craig's dumb fault. Ouch!
Sean cried as Marcus reached down and pulled him upright by his ear. Craig smiled until he too was yanked up by his ear. Craig made no protest, but by the grimace on his face, Marcus knew he had his full attention. Marcus pulled each of their ears until both were standing on their tiptoes.
I'll have no more of this. Do I make myself clear?
Marcus said. Both nodded their heads, then stumbled backwards as he released them. Sean rubbed his ear, giving his brother the evil eye, and Craig simply stood ignoring the pain in his ear. Marcus, feeling there would be no more horseplay, began to look the new room over. The room was square and about the size of a small bedroom, with a stairwell leading down into total darkness.
Hey, there's no door to this room,
Sean said, still fussing over his bent ear.
I guess the only way into this room would be by the stairs.
Craig said.
Well, that and the new door you two created.
Marcus chuckled. His brothers laughed at this too.
This place is probably riddled with secret passageways and rooms,
Marcus said. Sean drew closer to the stairwell.
I wouldn't if I were you.
Sean looked at Marcus.
Those stairs look more decayed than our great-granddad.
Marcus said.
I wasn't. Just curious as to what is down there.
Sean said.
If we had the rope,
Craig said, as he felt Marcus's glare boring through his skull, so stopped while he was ahead and studied the stairwell harder to avoid his brother's glare. They all froze in place as the sound of a click of a door closing came from the outer room. They could hear each other breathing, and the house groan and creak, but no other sound reached them. Marcus cautiously pushed the lantern through into the other room and squinted as he checked it out. It looked as it did just moments ago,
That was weird.
Marcus muttered.
What's this?
Sean said. Both brothers looked at Sean as he stooped over and picked something up.
What you got?
Craig asked.
I'm not sure, but it's got some weight to it.
Sean held it for them to see. Marcus brought the lantern over to take a better look. It looked to be some type of cog made of metal. It was roughly 2 handspans across the center and 1 finger thick. It had 42 teeth running along the outer edge.
There's something written on it. Can you make it out?
Craig asked.
Give me a knife so I can scrape the dirt away and see what it says.
Sean said. Marcus handed over his skinning knife to Sean. As he reached forward with the knife, it seemed to come to life on its own and was ripped from Sean's hand and landed flatly against the cog with a thwonk, causing Sean to jump and drop it. Marcus reacted quickly, reaching out, just managing to grab the wheel before it struck the ground.
That was different.
Craig said. Marcus grabbed the handle of the knife and with a little bit of effort was able to pry the knife free.
It's a lodestone.
Marcus proclaimed. Both his brothers looked blankly at him.
It's a stone that is endowed with mystical power over metal that mostly sages and wizards use, though I have heard tales of sailors also using it, but I'm not sure what for.
Sean looked a little dubious at the answer.
But I have never heard of anybody fashioning something like this out of it. From what I understand, it's very brittle to work with.
Craig moved in closer with a water skin.
Hold it a little higher so I can hit it with some water.
Craig said. When Sean did not move, Craig opened his mouth to yell at him, till he caught sight of Sean's expression. He stood as if he was frozen. His eyes were wide, and his mouth hung slack. Craig turned his head to see what surprised his brother in doing so. He did a double take. He reached out and slapped Marcus's arm. Marcus looked annoyed until he saw what his brothers were seeing and could not believe it.
What in the 9 hells is this?
Marcus said. All 3 stood and stared in disbelief at a wall that was once filled with a jagged hole, now stood firm and whole. Craig slowly stepped forward and reached out to touch it. His hand met resistance.
It's real,
Craig proclaimed. Marcus's mind was reeling and did not want to believe his eyes. He looked to the floor and could see the evidence that the hole did indeed exist at one point and time. Marcus stepped up to the wall to examine it. While the wood appeared to be old, its grain was slightly different from the rest of the wall. Plus, he could just make out a hairline seam between the original wood and the new wood. Craig pushed this time with both hands, but the new wood was very secure and did not even creak or show any type of weakness.
Well, we're not leaving the way we came in without tools.
Craig said.
Someone is messing with us, and I would say they have a fair amount of magic, so we are out of here.
Marcus said.
I guess we'll have to chance the stairs. I am the oldest, so I'll go first.
They gathered at the top of the stairs and peered down into the gloom. The lantern light made it possible to see the bottom of the stairwell and nothing more than the shadows that happily danced, waiting for the foolish to enter.
I don't like this.
Craig said.
I don't either, but we have no choice.
Marcus replied. He moved closer to the edge and put his right foot down on the first step. The step immediately protested by groaning. It continued getting louder as he applied more and more of his weight. The step soon started to crackle and hiss, warning him that it was near its breaking point. As he finally settled his weight on his right leg, the step seemed to accept its fate as it became silent.
Well, it looks as if it will hold,
Marcus said, but his voice did not carry any conviction as he slowly lifted his left leg. As he shifted his weight, the step gave in a soundless snap, throwing Marcus forward. His huge bulk was too much for the lower steps to support and simply crumpled and split as gravity was only helping to increase his forward motion. The lantern was ripped from his grasp and promptly threw them all into total darkness. Craig and Sean stood helpless as they could only hear the bone-jarring crash go on for what seemed a very long time.
Marcus?
Sean called. Sean's heart was in his throat as he waited for some sign that his brother was still alive.
Well, that wasn't a good idea,
Marcus said between groans of discomfort. Both of his brothers let out a nervous laugh at the relief he survived the fall.
Did you break anything?
Craig asked.
Only my pride, and I sure as hell's going to be sore tomorrow. I can't see a blasted thing. Tell me one of you at least brought the extra torches.
There was a click-click sound, till a few sparks jumped from the stones. Sean was striking together. The sparks managed to bring the torches to life. He picked them up and passed one to Craig. They both peered over the edge. They could see Marcus pulling himself upright. He had several nasty cuts and bruises on his arms and face, but seemed no worse for the wear.
Just thank the All-Father it was not further down,
Craig said. Sean was able to stretch his arm down far enough to give Marcus a torch and then proceed to climb down. Craig followed him down after passing his 2 remaining torches down. Marcus looked around till he found the lantern, which was now nothing more than scrap metal at this point.
How many torches do you have?
Marcus asked.
I got 2 more.
Sean said.
We don't know how long we'll be down here, so Sean, put yours out for now.
Marcus said. Sean pulled out a cloth and wrapped it quickly around the torch, smothering out the flame. The room was just big enough for the stairs to descend, then ended with only a small doorway leading off from the room to their right. The doorway led into a narrow passageway heading south. Marcus took the lead, followed by Sean, then Craig bringing up the rear. It was a low ceiling, causing Marcus to stoop and rub up against the slime-covered walls, often.
This stuff burns a little. Make sure you stay away from the walls,
Marcus said. Their footsteps sounded hollow as the sound when bounced off the walls tended to distort it, making the hairs on their neck raise up. The passage did not travel far before turning west. Marcus increased his step, and his breathing came quicker.
All right, there's got to be a way out of here. No, the walls are not closing in on me. What are you, 10 years old? You better slow down before you spook them.
Marcus thought. He struggled to slow his pace slightly. He was sweating profusely, even though the passage was rather cool, if not pleasant. Marcus once again increased his step when he could make out another stairwell leading up. Without thought or hesitation, Marcus charged up the steps. While the stairs complained, they were able to support him this time. Sean and Craig followed, but at a more cautious speed. They both looked at Marcus, and then to each other, then back to Marcus, but neither had the nerve to ask him about his obvious flight from the passage below. Marcus checked out the room, not wanting to meet his brother's eyes, and tried to slow his breathing down. The room looked similar to the one they just left, but a bit smaller.
This is great,
Marcus said as he looked at the tunnel they just came from, not willing to go back down.
Hey, look at this.
Sean said as he stood pointing at something on the wall. Marcus brought the torch over. As he brought the torch closer, the cobwebs danced away for fear of being burned, revealing a small square of metal.
What's you got?
Craig asked.
They look like hinges. And where there's hinges,
Marcus slid the torch along the wall till he found what he wanted and reached down and pressed hard until a click and the wall popped forward slightly.
a way out.
Marcus pushed the wall out to reveal a rather large closet.
This place gets stranger and stranger. You sure no one has lived here?
Sean asked. The closet was full of cloaks, furs, and heavy coats that looked in excellent condition. The closet was spotless, with no sign of age, other than some missing plaster, and the paint had faded to a nasty gray.
There's light coming from the next room,
Craig said, as he pointed to the bottom of the door, where a steady flow of light was peeking through.
What the?
Craig cried. Both Marcus and Sean turned to see a bizarre sight, and neither was quite sure what they were seeing. Craig was staggering back and forth with a fur cloak clinging to his back. "Get this thing off me," Craig cried out as he crashed into some cloaks that seemed to spring to life and started climbing onto him and wrapped themselves around him, pinning his arms to his sides. Marcus, finally realizing that his brother was in trouble, dropped his torch, which promptly went out. Racing forward, he tried to yank the clothing free. As he gripped one of the cloaks, it felt very rigid and unforgiving as metal. No matter how hard he yanked on the clothing, they would not give. All he managed to do was throw his brother around into more clothing, which promptly leapt on to Craig. Marcus, finally realizing that his brother was in trouble, dropped his torch, which promptly went out. Racing forward, he tried to yank the clothing free. As he gripped one of the cloaks, it felt very rigid and unforgiving as metal. No matter how hard he yanked on the clothing, they would not give. All he managed to do was throw his brother around into more clothing, which promptly leapt on to Craig.
Get your butt over here and help.
Marcus bellowed to Sean, who stood unmoving, fascinated at what was happening. Craig crashed into Marcus, knocking him into the wall hard. Craig was now covered in a thick covering of clothing, leaving only his feet visible, and his cries for help were nothing more than muffled moans. He finally collapsed to the ground under the sheer weight. The remaining clothing left hanging leapt from their hooks and hangers, making a dog pile on top of the helpless body.
Craig!
Marcus yelled as he ran to the pile with a strength born of desperation and began to rip the clothing free. Clothing began flying in all directions, landing in lifeless heaps. After a time, the clothing became less resistant. Marcus was able to toss large amounts of the clothing to the sides.
He's not there, is he?
Sean said. Marcus looked to Sean, who was pale, and his bottom lip quivered slightly as he stared at the spot Craig should have been. Marcus searched the closet, which was in total chaos, as there were piles everywhere, but there was no pile big enough to hide his brother.
We need to get out of here now,
Marcus said. He grabbed Sean and started to drag him to the door.
What of Craig? We can't leave him here.
Sean's voice was cracking and sounded as if he reached his breaking point. He tried pulling out of his brother's grasp, but he could not match his brother's strength.
We have no choice. Whatever is going on here is way over our heads. We need to get to the village and get help.
Marcus said. They pulled up next to the door, and Marcus put a finger to his lip and pressed his ear to the door. He could hear no sound coming from the next room. So slowly cracked the door, he could make out a rather large room that was well lit. He opened the door the rest of the way to reveal a stunning room. It was done completely in marble floors and hardwood stained in a deep mahogany. The room was huge and could easily fit 60 to 70 people comfortably. 3 massive chandeliers that hung from the expansive ceiling, holding 40 or so oversized candles, providing a warm light to the room. He stepped into the room, dragging Sean behind him. The east wall had 4 doors, including the one they had just come through. There was a door on the far west wall, and on the north wall was a grand double door that served as the main entrance. In front of the doors was a beautiful mural of Norof, done completely in different shades of marble. The mural was surrounded with 4 pure white columns that ran from the floor all the way to the high-tiled ceiling. The ceiling was done completely in copper tiles with pictures of different animals stamped or beaten into them.
I don't recall seeing any double doors from the outside,
Marcus said, as he turned to his brother when he did not respond. Sean's eyes looked slightly glazed over, and his whole body seemed slack.
It might be just covered up with wood. If it is, we'll just bust through it with whatever we can find.
Sean still did not respond, staring into a void that only he could see. Marcus gently grabbed his brother by the shoulder and led him to the doors. Marcus let go of his brother to open the doors. The handle was made of a high-polished brass that turned easily in his hand. The doors opened to reveal a brick wall.
No way. This can't be right.
Marcus turned toward his brother.
Someone is playing a sick game with us. We need to find Craig.
Sean finally responded in a flat tone. Marcus took his brother's arm and started to lead him across the room when he froze. The floor sounded like it was being ripped up, and it was getting louder. He studied the west wall till he could see it. The floor was flexing upwards as something huge was passing under it. The stone flexed, but did not break, as it should have, and the thing that was pushing it outwards was very large. Whatever was under the floor was heading in their general direction. Marcus's eyes darted to his brother, who seemed to not notice then, back to the thing coming into the room. The floor finally flattened near the west wall, revealing this thing was at least 7 times his own height. It stopped abruptly, no more than 3 paces from where they stood. Marcus drew his breath in and held it. His eyes widened as he watched the swell in the floor where the creature's head should be shifted closer to them. He could feel the floor rise under him. His lungs were starting to scream for air. He slowly and quietly released the trapped air and forced himself to breathe slow and shallow. His arm began to betray him as it twitched as he held his muscles taut. He was sure this thing would at any moment jump up and eat them in one bite when its head shifted back to its former track with a lurch, then moved ahead at a very fast pace as if it had the scent of other prey. Marcus slowly worked the knots in his muscles out quickly. Once the creature was out of sight, grabbed his brother and headed out the door farthest from whatever that thing was. The single door on the west wall opened onto a long hallway that ran south and disappeared very quickly into the dark. Marcus did not want to chance going back for his torch. He dropped, so turned his brother around and rummaged in his pack to find the torch that he had used earlier. He noticed his brother had placed the cog in his pack, but it was not important at the current time. With some relief, he was able to bring the torch to life, but it only offered a slightly better view of the hall. The hallway ended at the outer wall to his right. There were 2 doors evenly spaced directly across from them. The hall was the first real impression of how old the house really was. This once elegant hallway had lost the battle to time and was nothing more than decay itself. There were slight remnants along the floor indicating there was once a plush carpet. The walls showed heavy marks where large paintings may have hung.
Craig!
Sean shouted. Marcus looked over his shoulder with a puzzled look.
What are you going on about?
I heard him. He's in the next room.
Sean said. He ran past Marcus before he could react and threw the door open. No,
Marcus yelled.
But he's here. Can't you hear him calling for help?
Sean said as he stepped into the darkness and disappeared out of Marcus's sight. Marcus stepped forward to chase after his brother. There was a moment of silence. Then a deep and gravelly voice stopped Marcus in his tracks.
Get out!
The sound of the voice jarred Marcus to his core. The sound felt as if he had been hit in the chest with a great deal of force. It seemed the next few moments flowed in slow motion. Sean made no sound as he came flying out of the room backwards and flew past Marcus, slamming into the opposite wall, where he hit with a tremendous thud and came to rest. Sean hung on the wall like a rag doll. Marcus had to blink a few times before he realized there were 5 rather large knives protruding from his brother's chest, pinning him to the wall.
You son of a bastard! I'll kill you!
Marcus blindly charged into the room, weaving the torch in a wild fashion, looking for someone to lay his hands on and rip them apart with his bare hands. The room looked as if it may have served as a kitchen. He ignored his surroundings. He turned in time to see the other door slam shut. He could hear footfalls running away from him. He quickly stepped back into the hallway and started to pursue whoever it was, with only the darkest of thoughts of what he would do to this person, when it hit him, causing his feet to falter and stop.
There's no damn footprints in the dust.
Marcus thought. He looked back and could clearly see where he had passed. But the hallway before him held no signs that anybody had passed here in some time. He sank to his knees and wept like a small baby for a long time.
Pull yourself together, man. You don't want Craig and Sean to see you like this. You must make it to town and get help getting my brothers out of here, then burning this cursed place to the ground.
He dried his eyes on his sleeve and then stood up. The light from his torch was starting to wane as he looked around for something else to burn. Up ahead was something still hanging on the wall, covered up by a cloth. He slowly walked down to it. Reaching up, he pulled the drop cloth off, revealing a mirror. The mirror looked older than the mansion, with its decorative wooden frame. The glass shimmered slightly in his dying torchlight. He looked into the mirror and could see where his tears had left tracks in the soot on his face. He could clearly see the hallway behind him. Marcus watched as he blinked. Then his image was gone from the mirror. The mirror still showed the hallway, but he was nowhere to be seen. He tried to turn from the mirror, but his body refused to respond. His mind reeled as he felt trapped, till it finally dawned on him. He was now part of the mirror. His mind could take no more as he plunged into total madness. As the world came crashing down around him, he failed to notice a very dark shadow pass in front of the last bit of torchlight and stopped. It seemed to look deeply into the mirror. It let out a hiss of disappointment and then moved on. End of chapter 1. Thank you for listening. We put one chapter out a month. This is a one-person gig currently, so please bear that in mind. It would help if you hit the like button and subscribe. See you in the next chapter.